So welcome to Course in Miracles, text chapter 29, the awakening. Yes, we're there now. We're now at the place of the awakening, which means you are going to go through a radical shift in awareness. We're now at the point of the course where the non-dual understanding is either understood or not. And we're now at the point of the course. And of course, those that haven't figured out the non-dual understanding start to find faults with either the teaching or the teacher. Because now they are now being challenged in ways that it doesn't appease their little body-mind ego. They're still stuck with the idea of sacrifice. They're still stuck with the idea of people-pleasing. In other words, they're still stuck with pleasing the activities of their dreaming mind, their ego. So they're still wanting to please their ego, personified, projected as other people. And so they feel like that abandoning other people or abandoning the world or denouncing the world, which is not what I've said, which is not what the Course has said. I've said love your creations, but not be attached to them. Don't derive your happiness from your creation. You can't derive happiness from your effects. You can only derive happiness from knowing yourself and your cause. What is your cause? What caused you? God did. So knowing yourself as the effects of God, yourself, your true self, not your body, mind, self. So at this stage of the course, and as you may have noticed in the preceding chapters leading into it, is when certain people that were very excited at the beginning to learn all about miracles, hoping for a miracle, started to leave the course. They start putting the course down. They feel like, oh, I'm losing myself. And they would be right. They are losing their little self. Their ego is dying. And the ego says, oh, no, this is too much. This is going too fast. This is too hard. The teacher's too harsh. The teacher's too cruel, too rude, too direct. We're feeling insulted by the teacher. We'll find fault with anything, with his language, with his use of verbs, pronouns. Now we start to find fault because the ego looks for a reason to justify itself as being right. Now the teacher that gave him so much hope, the teaching that gave him so much hope in the beginning, what were they hoping for? Miracles. What was the miracle? Whatever they thought it was going to be. Mostly some special form of special love relationship would come their way. They would find the perfect partner and have this romantic, holy relationship, which is just nonsense, doesn't exist. There's no such thing as romantic, holy relationship. True holy relationship is you with your holy self, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Son of God self. That's the holy relationship, which once you have that relationship fully known to you, now the holy relationship is you with your source, God, as an extension of. Now it becomes too tough. So the pseudo-spiritualist, the person who loves to think of themselves as spiritual, but is still easily offended, which means they're still completely asleep, but they've convinced themselves that they're special in some form of spiritual way. They now start abandoning the course. This is too hard because they're still trapped with the idea of scarcity. They still believe of themselves as a body mind, and they still believe they have to sacrifice the pleasure and enjoyment of the world to truly understand the non-duality. And in a way, they're right, because you have to give it up. You surrender it. But surrendering it means you surrender your attachment to it, realizing that joy isn't in the attachment of the illusionary world. Joy is in that which thinks it can attach, in that which cannot be attached, because it's that in which the entire universe, world, and people abide in as activities of a dreaming mind. Activities which are misperceived. If you take pure light, imagine this pure beam of light, and you shine it through a red filter, and you shine it onto perfectly white snow. Pure light shining onto perfectly white snow, you wouldn't know there's light. It's just white snow. Put a red filter in front of it, what will the snow appear as? Red snow. And there's no way you're going to see white snow while the filter of separation, the red filter of separation, fear, sin, guilt, the attachment to whatever you think snow should be, is there. That attachment is the red filter. And you're not asked to sacrifice the snow. You're asked to give up the idea that a red filter is even possible. What's the red filter? Synonymous with sin, fear, guilt. Bodies. Love is the absence of bodies. If you think you're only going to feel loved by another body, you're going to have a romantic experience. You're not going to know love, because what is love? Love is the essence of what you are. It's not a feeling. It's not something you gain. It's not something you give. It's that which you are. Now, the entire universe is an activity of the dreamer's mind. Okay, and the dreamer's mind, the minute it localizes, becomes conscious. 3 levels of consciousness: unconscious awareness, conscious awareness, where you start to become aware of self and something beyond you, and then awareness of awareness. And once awareness of awareness comes in, consciousness dissolves and awareness is known. Awareness is not aware of body-mind identity illusions. And illusions can conceptualize awareness but can't know it, because once the knowing of the knowing, awareness of awareness is known, the illusion dissolves in the light of the awareness. So awareness is not aware of activities which don't exist, and activities that don't exist cannot know truth, awareness. So just imagine yourself for a second as a fish in the ocean looking for the ocean, a ripple on top of the ocean looking for the ocean. If you to take a drop out of the ocean and look at its genetics, its DNA, in that little DNA water droplet is the DNA of the entire ocean. And the entire ocean contains the DNA of the droplet. So we're looking for self in self. So everything you see is an illusion of what? Of light. Everything you see is actually pure light, ever extending. But the minute you put a filter away, it looks like people, places, things, and events. It looks like a planet, looks like a universe. The truth of it is, it's just pure light. And that pure light is awareness. And another word for awareness is God. Omnipresent, everywhere, always present. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnificent. No, we're not. There is no time, no place, no state of mind where God is absent. Never. God is everywhere, and everything actually abides in God. But abides in God asleep, not aware it's never left. There is nothing to be feared. There is no way in which a gap could be conceived of in the wholeness that is his, that is God. The compromise, the least and littlest gap would represent in his eternal love is quite impossible. And we, the body-mind, but represent a gap, which is quite impossible. For it would mean his love could harbor just a hint of hate. Not possible. His gentleness turned sometimes into attack, and his eternal patience sometimes fail. Not possible. And yet, all this do you believe when you perceive a gap between your brother and yourself? If you think there's a distance between you and I, you're mistaken. We are activities of our mind. Our mind, one mind. How could you trust him then if you perceive a gap between your brother and you? Well, he must be deceptive in his love. And so the minute you think of your brother as deceptive, subconsciously you think God must be that too. Be wary then. Let him not come too close. This is what we believe. And leave a gap between you and his love. So keep your distance between you and your brother. So think about all your past special love relationships. You still want to hang on to something. Because when you fully surrender in love, it gets thrown back at you. So then you've been hurt before. And now you create a shield. I love, but I don't trust completely. So you leave a little gap between you and your brother's love. And notice love is capitalized, which means your brother's love, his essence, his true self, means God within him, the self which is our shared being in all of us. So, and you want to leave a gap between you and his love through which you can escape if there be need for you to flee. And why would there be need for you to flee? Because you don't fully trust. So because you don't believe, whatever you don't believe will be your reality. Your resistance becomes your reality. And in this little gap, here is the fear of God most plainly seen. Because of the love, what you think is love from a brother, from another person. For that love is treacherous to those who fear, since fear and hate can never be apart. So if you fear love, what do? You hate it. You hate it. Why? Because you get lost in it. No one who hates is but afraid of love, and therefore must be afraid of God. So if you're in resistance to anything in this world, you're in resistance to God's love, because everything is actually God's love. You're meant to love everything, which means accept everything as is. Of course, you can't go and love a murderer. We're not talking about loving as in you love a murderer. You abide in love, and so does that person who appears to be a murderer. And the essence of that person and the essence of you is love. The body-mind of that person isn't. Your body-mind isn't. So your body-mind can't love his body-mind. The love you are in truth recognizes the love he, she is in truth too. That is what love is. It's the knowing of our essence, our self. Certain it is he knows not what love means. So we believe we know what love is, but no one else does. And so he fears to love and loves to hate. We say, no, we don't love to hate. Of course you do. You talk about it all the time. It gives you a hit, makes you feel sorry for yourself. It makes you feel real, alive, emotional. Love emotion. And so he fears to love and loves to hate. And so he thinks, and so you think that love is fearful. And you think that hate is love because you love to hate. You love to be angry. This is the consequence the little gap must bring. The fact that you think you're separated from 8 billion people to those who cherish it. Why? Because they want to be autonomous. They want to be individuals. We all want to be special human beings and think that it is their salvation and their hope. And yet, how can it be? As you know, I don't often underline text before we get to it, but this one is vital that you completely understand this. The fear of God, the greatest obstacle to peace, the minute you believe you're separated from your brother, must flow across. So the obstacle that love needs to flow across has not yet gone. Why? Because you created the gap in your mind, and you got to close the gap in your mind between yourself, okay, your illusionary self, and your true self. Because the minute your illusionary body-mind self closes the gap to your true self, what happens to the illusion of a body-mind? It just becomes a device in which the self is made known. And the minute the self is made known, what are your brothers? Activities in your dreaming mind, because you've now taken the first mover position. The rest are past. But this one still remains to block and make the way to light seem dark, it's not dark, and fearful, seem fearful, perilous and bleak. You had decided that your brother is your enemy. You believe that everything that happens to you, all your pains, all your sufferings, all your hurts was done by your brother as an enemy, not realizing they're manifestations of your own fear. Sometimes a friend, perhaps provided that your separate interests made your friendship possible a little while. So they were great while it all served you. The teacher for God was great while he told you what you wanted to hear. But as the teacher for God dials it up into the light of awareness, into the true non-dual space, your ego body mind says, no more. I'm going to have to sacrifice my illusion where I've derived all my pleasure, but also derived your pain, and you leave that one out. Because the body never remembers the pain. It always remembers the joy, the pleasure. The only pain it remembers is the pain it wants to hang on to so that it can hope for more joy. Because if it was let to go all the pain, it wouldn't have to hope for joy. It would know itself as joy. So not within a little gap perceived between you and him, lest he turned into an enemy. So you want to bring your brother close, but not too close. Let him come close to you, and you jumped back. As you approached, did he but instantly withdraw. And that's the game we have between people, body minds, that believe they're going to receive love from you as you expect love from them. And the minute it's not given and received in exactly the way it's misperceived to be, they don't love us anymore, and we run away. And of course, the problem is as the body ages, as we start to age, and we no longer the beautiful person we once used to be, we then place a judgment on our own body mind as if it was real, and then project our self-hatred or our self-disdain or the fact that we don't like ourselves, we don't like the fact how we look in the mirror, and then we project it as if someone else is thinking, because it's thought by you first. And if the person that should then act in any way that reminds you of the way you misperceived yourself negatively, you react on them and you blame them. And very often at this stage of the course, you blame your teacher because he's no longer blowing hot air up your ass. Yeah. And that's it. Did I say ass? I damn right said ass. Because you don't have an ass. So if you're offended, it's because you believe you're a body. Yes. Line it up. Third eye and Uranus. You're in retrograde and you're running away from the reality that once gave you joy, awoke yourself, and now you're prepared to fall asleep simply so that you don't have to sacrifice the hope of an illusion, which is the very reason you came, because there was no hope where the hope does not exist. And yet somewhere in the dark recesses of your mind, there's an idea still lingering that you could possibly still find love here, when you don't realize you are love. And to love your creations is to recognize all of it is in your mind without attachment to any of it, without a single expectation, because all you truly desire, the only thing you still desire, is to know yourself who remembers God, who knows that God is source, and you are the extension thereof. You are the love, the joy of God. A cautious friendship, limited in scope and carefully restricted in amount, became the treaty that you made with your brother. And at this stage of the course, with your teacher. Thus you and your brother but shared a qualified entente, okay, in which a clause of separation was a point you both agreed to keep intact. And yet the spirit in you says return. Don't listen to that little ego that says you're going to be alone and lonely and afraid. It's lied to you its whole life. Why would you still listen to it? It's led you but nowhere but suffering, loneliness, separation. Why do you want to listen to something when every other attempt in your life has failed? Why do you think it's going to work now? What's going to make this one more special than the last one, which you believed 100% was going to work? Because if you look at it, did you really believe they were going to work? Or did you just hope or believe, which is that you didn't know they were going to work? And thus violating this was thought to be a breach of treaty, not to be allowed. Thus, you and your brother would share a qualified entente, which a clause of separation was a point you both agreed to keep intact. This is what you've agreed with the world. And when your teacher calls you, the Holy Spirit inside you calls you, through my voice, your own inner voice, whoever's voice it is, you don't listen anymore because you went so far and no more, which means you'll be back, whether in this lifetime or the next, but you'll have to undergo this again until you let go of the idea that you are not a body. And you love that one faith. I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm still as God created me, I'm spirit eternal, the extension of God's love. You love that. We love to recite that. But when it comes to letting go of the body-mind identity, the thing that was your pleasure and your pain, the very reason why you came to the course, because the pain was as unbearable as your desire for the pleasure was. Not the pleasure. You try and remember pleasure in your mind right now. You can't. It's a fantasy activity in your mind. Do you feel the pleasure you once had? No. So it wasn't real. Are you suffering? Yes. That means your suffering appears real. Do you want to give it up? Absolutely. That's the only sacrifice that's asked of you. The sacrifice of sacrifice, the sacrifice of suffering. Return to self. Be thyself knowingly. The gap between you and your brother is not one of space between two separate bodies. And this but seems to be dividing off your separate minds. It is the symbol of a promise made to meet when you prefer, and it suits you, and separate till you and he elect to meet again. And then your bodies seem to get in touch, 11 minutes at a time, and thereby signify a meeting place to join. But always is it possible for you and him to go your separate ways, conditional upon the right to separate. Will you agree, and he, to meet from time to time and keep apart in intervals of separation, which do protect you from the sacrifice of love? And what do you think is the sacrifice of love? The surrender to love, where you lose your identity. And now we're talking about human love. Humans surrender to the human desire love, lose themselves in their identity, and then spend the rest of their lives trying to get it back. And God is saying, my love isn't like your human love. I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm not asking you to sell your homes and follow me, and give up your job and follow me, and give up your work and follow me. I'm asking you to realize there's nothing to give up. You are already in me. Just awaken to the fact that you are. Give up your dreams of illusions. And don't worry, while you still abide here in a body-mind, all else shall be given you. Everything else will take care of itself. You won't want for anything. The things that you thought you wanted, you won't want anymore. But what you'll get is the conscious, joyous understanding and knowing of self as that which is the love and joy of God. You'll know yourself as love. You'll be that joyous being. There's no feeling. It's a sense of. It's an all-encompassing sense awareness. In illusions, the body saves you for it gets away from total sacrifice, illusionary sacrifice, and gives to you at the time in which to build again your separate self, your fantasies again, which you truly believe diminishes as you and your brother meet, because you want love. And the minute you find love, you lose yourself in it. And what passes for human love in this world is filled with compromise. Even Gary wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, how to make someone else feel loved, because they need a love language. Spirit needs a love language. Spirit is love. It's the recognition of. If two people come together in wanting to serve their highest spiritual ideal in one another, what could you possibly want for in a relationship when you are the love of God? The body could not separate from your mind, from your brothers, unless you wanted it to be a cause of separation and of distance seen between you and him. But it can't actually do it. But thus you endow it with a power that lies not within itself. You give the body a power which is false, but because of your belief, it seems to be there. And and herein lies its power over you, because you've given it the power over you. For now you think that it determines when your brother and you will meet, and limits your ability to make communion with your brother's mind. Why? Because you think there's a distance between it, not realizing you both exist in mind. And now it tells you where to go and how to go there, what is feasible for you to undertake, and what you cannot do. And it's going to drag the entire past in terms of your ability, stick it into the present, project it into the future, and you decide, whoa, I failed then, I'm not going to try now. It dictates what its health can tolerate. It can handle so much and no more. What will tire it and make it sick? It's your predetermined. And the minute you predetermine it, it becomes real for you. And its inherent weaknesses set up the limitations on what you would do and keep your purpose limited and weak to the weakness and limitations of a human body. And of course, it just weakens with time. And yet the body will accommodate to these wishes if you would have it so. It will allow but limited indulgences in love. What love? Human love, which is desire, with intervals of hatred in between. And you can see people, they go from love, I love you so much, you are the perfect person for me, I can't imagine living a day without you. And the next day you want to kill them and stab them with a fork. Why? Because they didn't live up to your identity idea of what they should be. Why? Because they're an activity in the same dreaming mind that has its own agenda. You have to get the mind to agree, and the only way you can get the mind to agree is move into the awake part of the mind, Christ mind. And the minute you move into the right mind, Christ mind, there is no world to agree with. You won't give it any more attention. The minute you achieve what you're looking for, you stop looking because you are it. And the body will take command of when to love, who to love, how to love, and when to shrink, become an empath, more safely interfere, avoid and denounce the world. It will be sick because you do not know what loving means. So if you find yourself sick, you've missed the idea what love is. It's not an emotion. It's not something someone gives another person. It's not what someone hasn't given you. You've never lacked love. It's like saying to a fish, you lack water. Well, he's in the water. And the minute he's out of the water, he's not real. And so you must misuse each circumstance and everyone you meet, including at this stage your teachers. Because you go, oh, now they're getting too hard. They were all sweet when you read chapter 1 and said miracles. And now they're asking us to let go of the idea of sacrifice, but that's a sacrifice itself. Let go of the idea of special love relationship, but that's a sacrifice. No, you let go of the idea of it. The idea that it will make you happy, that you as a body can love someone else and someone else as a body can love you. No, love is the essence of what you are without bodies. And so you must misuse each circumstance and everyone you meet and see in them a purpose not your own. So you think they're fighting you. They're going to take away your worldly pleasure. That's what the teacher's here for. Teacher's here only to remind you you're dreaming. Wake up from this. Stop searching for happiness in the dream. Be yourself knowingly, and all the happiness you searched for. I mean, if you really wanted an ice cream and I put one in your hand, the one you wanted, would you still, while you eat your ice cream, go look for the ice cream? No, you haven't. Well, look, you got it. You've got what you wanted. So, teacher for God, you have what you want. You wanted to know what you are. You now understand and you know that you are not a body, you are spirit. What else do you want to know? You are spirit and you abide in God. God is spirit and abides in you. What else do you want to know? If you ask any other question now, who's asking the question? If you know you are spirit and God is spirit and you're the extension of God's spirit, what else do you want to know? When's the world going to end? There's no world. Who's going to win the next election? There's no election. When will my body die? There is no body. But when will I die? There is no death. What else do you want to know? Will I find love? You are love. Will I be happy? You are happiness itself. What could you possibly want to know still? Will I get a job? There is no job. Be yourself knowingly, and whatever will come your way as an extension of the happiness you are. If you're happy, happy job comes. If you're unhappy, you won't get a job, or you'll get a job and it'll just make you just as unhappy as you are. Be thyself knowingly. Be thyself, which is happiness itself. What else do you want to know? What else is there to know? This is vital. It is not love that asks a sacrifice. Love asks you to sacrifice nothing. So don't ever mistake my direct path with asking you to give up the world. You can't give up the world. There is no world to give up. Give up the idea that the world's outside you or that you live in the world. Understand that the world, everyone you know, the entire universe is in your mind. It's an extension of your mind. But fear demands the sacrifice of love, the knowing of yourself. For in love's presence, fear cannot abide. And that's what you fear. You fear knowing yourself as love and losing out the illusions where you chase love. For hate to be maintained, love must be feared. And only sometimes present, sometimes gone. Sometimes present and sometimes gone in ways you've imagined it should be. Thus is love seen as treacherous because it's hurtful. That's your experience of it. Because it seems to come and go uncertainly, and offer no sustainability to you. Because it doesn't have any, can't. It's an illusion. You do not see how limited and weak is your allegiance, and how frequently you have demanded that love go away because it didn't suit your self-image. That person didn't give you what you thought you needed, and you obviously couldn't give them what they thought they needed. Why? Because you were two empty halves trying to be complete. If you take two empty halves, you get one empty whole. So you're never happy. You need two fullnesses, two full wholes, two complete beings to come together and know that they are complete in themselves and leave you quietly alone and in peace. You do not see how limited and weak is your allegiance and how frequently you've demanded that love go away and then leave you quietly and alone in peace. And then you complain that you're alone and not in peace. You still haven't connected the fact that alone is all oneness. It doesn't mean alone as a body mind all by yourself in your little tiny apartment in the middle of a city and no one loves you, no one's even noticed you, and you go down to the shops, you go across the traffic, and the taxi try and knock you over, and people are rude and bump into you, and the person behind the counter at the that shop had served you didn't greet you. They used to smile at you, and now no one notices you, and now you think you're alone. This is not what awakening is asking for. Alone in awakening means the recognition we are all one, even the ones you don't like. There's only one, and that is the Son, and he's dreamt us all up. We're activities in his dreaming mind, and yet when you return to the I am, the self, you realize his dreaming mind is I, my dreaming mind. I'm dreaming. All 8 billion of us, are activities of the same dreaming mind. And the essence of all 8 billion is the dreaming mind awake. The body, innocent of goals, has no desire for anything, is your excuse for variable goals you hold and force the body to maintain. You would not fear its weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness. You do not fear your body's weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness. It neither has strength nor weakness. It has no thing because it's not real. Would you know that nothing stands between you and your brother? Would you want to know that nothing stands between you and all 8 billion people in this world? Would you know that there is no gap behind which you can hide? Would you know that there is no gap behind which you can hide? You can't. This doesn't exist. There's no shadow. The mind is shadow. There's no shadow in the awake mind. There is a shock that comes to those who learn their savior is their enemy no more. The very people you hated, the very people that hurt you, when you've forgiven them, you realize the gift they were. There is awareness that is aroused by learning that the body is not real. But then what am I? What am I going to do? Am I ever going to have ice cream again? Yeah. And you'll have it just awake. And you'll realize you don't need it. You are what you once derived out of an ice cream, you now derive out of just being yourself. And of course, if you're trapped in the ego body mind, you can't imagine that being alone is actually all oneness. And then you fear that being alone in your all oneness awareness now means you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. No, you won't. There's no need to be alone. The path of a master is not a lonely one. The path to self-mastery is the only path. You're on the path. You can slow it down and sit on the park bench on the path, but you're on the path, and it goes only in one direction. You have to go through it to get to where you want to go, which is awaken to the reality you've never left. And there are overtones of seeming fear around the happy message. God is love. We love to say that, and we don't really mean it. And when we do mean it, we're afraid of it. We're afraid God is love. Not God is loving. God isn't loving. God doesn't love anything. God doesn't love anyone. God is love, and you are the extension of God's love. Your body mind is a misperception of that extension. If you could see the world correctly, you wouldn't notice the difference between your hand and the world. It would all be pure light. Yet all that happens when the gap is gone is eternal peace. What are you afraid of? This is what you're going to have, eternal peace. Nothing more than that, and nothing less. Without the fear of God, fear of death, fear of God's the same. What could induce you to abandon him? What toys or trinkets in the gap could serve to hold you back and instant from his love? And toys and trinkets are special love relationships too. Would you allow the body to say no to heaven's calling, yourself calling you from within? Were you not afraid to find a loss of self in finding God? This is why people fear God, because they think they're going to lose their identity. And they'd be correct, because your identity is false. But you'll gain an identity far beyond your wildest dreams. And with it comes sense, awareness, not sense perception, sense awareness that is so extensive. I can't explain it. It's impossible. Forget it. Don't even try. The only way I can explain it is like this. That's it. There's no words. There's no words. Can yourself be lost by being found? And if you would capitalize that S, can the essence of what you are be lost by being found? What goes searching? The illusion goes searching. What does it find? The essence of what it is. So what did it search for? The essence of what it is. And where did it find it? Within itself. And what does it take for it to find it within itself? Be still and know I am. Silence, abidance, gratitude. Silent stillness in the abide in silent stillness, in total gratitude. Gratitude for what? Being. Stop there and do some questions.